My husband's best friend pulled my hair during his proposal and had a public meltdown, saying the proposal doesn't count, without her approval. I met my husband Alex when we both started working at the same accounting firm. He was quiet and kept to himself, but he'd always help me fix the printer and shared his good pens when mine ran out. We started getting lunch together and things just clicked. The problem was his best friend since high school, Jessica. They'd been friends for 15 years and she acted like she owned him. The first time Alex introduced us, she looked me up and down and said I wasn't his usual type. When I asked what she meant, she listed all his exes and explained why each relationship failed. She made sure to mention she was there to comfort him every single time. Jessica would text him constantly when we were together. Not important stuff, just random thoughts and inside jokes. If he didn't respond fast enough, she'd call saying it was an emergency. The emergency was always something dumb like needing his opinion on what dress to buy or asking him to kill a spider at her apartment. She lived 20 minutes away but acted like Alex was her personal handyman. Every date we went on, she'd somehow show up. We'd be at a restaurant and she'd walk in claiming she was meeting someone who canceled. We'd be at the movies and she'd be there alone because she was bored. We went bowling once and she showed up with her cousin saying they'd been planning to bowl for weeks. Alex never saw the pattern. When we moved in together after a year of dating, Jessica lost her mind. She came over the first day with a housewarming gift for Alex. Nothing for me. She spent 3 hours going through his stuff and reorganizing his closet because she knew how he liked things. She pointed out everything I was doing wrong. The cups were in the wrong cabinet. His work clothes shouldn't be next to his gym clothes. He needed his college trophies displayed, not boxed up. She actually unpacked his boxes while telling me stories about every single item. Then she started showing up every Sunday for breakfast, because that was their tradition. She'd cook using my kitchen and leave a huge mess for me to clean. If I made breakfast instead, she'd remake it the right way Alex supposedly liked it. She'd sit between us on the couch and put her feet in his lap. When I said something, she called me insecure and said real couples don't need to sit together all the time. The worst part was how she'd bring up their history constantly. Every conversation turned into remember when we did this or that time we went there. She had 15 years of material and used every bit of it. She knew his extended family better than I did and made sure I knew it. She was in all their family photos from vacations and holidays. His mom even called her their honorary daughter. Things got worse when Alex started planning the proposal. I didn't know he was planning it, but Jessica did because he told her everything. She started acting extra possessive. She'd grab his arm when we walked places. She'd whisper in his ear in front of me. She started posting old photos of them on Instagram talking about how some friendships last forever. She even changed his contact name in her phone to my person and made sure I saw it. The night Alex proposed, we were at this nice restaurant with a garden area. I thought we were celebrating my promotion. Our families were hiding inside waiting for us to come back in after the proposal. Alex got down on one knee in the garden and I started crying. He was halfway through his speech when Jessica came running out screaming his name. She was supposed to be inside with everyone else, but she couldn't help herself. She ran over yelling about how he couldn't do this without talking to her first. Alex tried to keep going, but she grabbed his shoulder. When he brushed her off and kept talking to me, she reached over and yanked my hair. Hard. Like pulled me backwards by my ponytail. I almost fell over. Alex jumped up to catch me, and Jessica started crying about how I was ruining their friendship. She said I changed him. She said he promised they'd be best friends forever. She said I wasn't good enough for him. The families came running out and saw her having a complete meltdown. Alex's mom tried to calm her down, but Jessica pushed her away. Security had to escort her out while she screamed about how the proposal didn't count because she didn't approve. Alex proposed again inside with everyone watching, and I said yes. Jessica wasn't invited to the wedding, obviously, but she started dating this guy Rob 2 months after our engagement. She got engaged to him after knowing him for 4 months. She planned her wedding for the week before ours. She sent Alex an invitation, saying she wanted him there as her man of honor since he was her best friend. Alex threw it in the trash. She had her wedding at the country club in town. My cousin worked there and told me Jessica spent the entire reception talking about Alex. She told everyone how they'd been best friends since high school. She made a speech about how some people leave your life but the memories last forever. She got drunk and cried to anyone who'd listen about losing her best person. Her new husband Rob left the reception early. They got divorced 3 months later. Jessica tried reaching out to Alex after her divorce, saying she missed her best friend. Alex didn't respond. She showed up at our house on our anniversary with a gift for him. I stand in my doorway on our anniversary evening, staring at Jessica holding a wrapped gift box with Alex's name written on it in her handwriting. Something inside me snaps after months of her invasions. She's wearing the same perfume she wore to our engagement party, that sweet, flowery smell that used to fill our apartment during her Sunday breakfast visits. She has that familiar, desperate smile on her face that used to make me feel guilty, but now just makes me angry. My hands are shaking, but I keep them at my sides. She takes a step closer to the door and I move to block her path completely. I tell her she needs to leave immediately and she's not welcome at our home anymore. My voice comes out steady despite my racing heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. She tries to look past me into the house, craning her neck to see around my shoulder. She calls for Alex like I'm just an obstacle between them, like I'm some temporary thing she can move aside. I physically block the doorway with my body, spreading my arms to grip both sides of the frame. She takes another step forward and I don't move. We stand there for a few seconds just staring at each other. Alex comes to the door after hearing Jessica's voice from the living room. I watch his face carefully, needing to see whose side he'll take this time. He looks between us for a long moment. His mouth opens like he's going to say something, but nothing comes out at first. Then he tells Jessica she shouldn't have come here. The words are quiet but firm. I feel a tiny bit of hope that maybe he's finally seeing the pattern. Maybe all those conversations we've had about boundaries are actually getting through to him. Jessica's eyes go wide like she can't believe what she's hearing from him. Jessica starts crying immediately, those big tears that roll down her cheeks in a way that always worked on Alex before. She says she just wanted to drop off a gift and doesn't understand why we're being so cruel to her after everything they've been through together. She brings up their high school graduation when his dad didn't show up, and she sat with him in her car for 2 hours. She mentions the time in college when he got food poisoning and she drove him to the emergency room at 3 a.m. She talks about the family vacation to the beach house when she was included in all the photos. She uses their shared history like a weapon against my 3 years with him. Every memory is designed to remind him that she was there first and longest. Alex tells Jessica that showing up unannounced after everything that happened at the proposal isn't okay. His voice is firmer than I've ever heard him use with her. He steps closer to me and puts his hand on my shoulder. Jessica's tears stop instantly like someone turned off a faucet. Her face goes cold, which is somehow scarier than the crying. Her mouth becomes a thin line and her eyes look different, harder. She says Rob was right about Alex changing into someone she doesn't recognize. She says the Alex she knew would never treat his best friend this way. She says I've turned him into a stranger. I ask Alex to go back inside so I can talk to Jessica alone. I need her to hear directly from me without him as a buffer between us. He hesitates, looking between us again with worry on his face. I touch his arm and tell him it's okay. He agrees but walks slowly back into the house, looking over his shoulder twice before disappearing around the corner. Once he's gone, Jessica drops the sad act completely. Her face changes in a second. She asks what I think I'm doing stealing her best friend. The way she says it makes it sound like I committed a crime. She crosses her arms over her chest and shifts her weight to one hip. I tell Jessica that Alex is my husband, not her possession. I remind her that her behavior at the proposal was assault witnessed by everyone we care about. I mention the security guard who had to escort her out while both our families watched. She laughs, actually laughs, and says, I'm being dramatic about a little hair pulling. She says I'm too sensitive and that Alex always dated girls who could take a joke. She rolls her eyes and shakes her head like I'm the one being unreasonable. I realize in that moment that she genuinely doesn't see what she did as wrong. In her mind, pulling my hair during a proposal is just being playful or showing emotion. Jessica says she's known Alex since they were 15, and I've only been around for 3 years. She asks who do I think he'll choose if I make him pick between us. She says their friendship has survived every girlfriend he's ever had, and I won't be any different. I tell her that's exactly the kind of thinking that got her escorted out by security. I explain that healthy friendships don't operate on ownership or competition. I say that real friends support each other's relationships instead of sabotaging them. She rolls her eyes like I'm lecturing her about something she already knows. She says I don't understand their bond because I wasn't there for all those years. I take the gift box from her hands before she can pull it away. I tell her I'll make sure Alex gets it. Then I close the door while she's still standing there looking shocked that I dismissed her. I lock the deadbolt and the chain. Through the window next to the door, I watch her stand on our porch for a full 2 minutes. She just stands there staring at the closed door like she's waiting for it to open again. Finally, she walks back to her car parked on the street. I'm shaking but also feel stronger than I have in months. My hands are trembling as I set the gift box on the entry table. Alex is sitting on the couch looking miserable when I come back inside. His head is in his hands and he doesn't look up when I walk in. He apologizes for Jessica showing up and ruining our anniversary dinner plans. We were supposed to go to that Italian place downtown, the one where we had our first date. I sit next to him with the gift box between us on the couch cushion. I tell him we need to have a serious conversation about what happens next with Jessica. I say this pattern can't continue into our marriage. He nods but doesn't say anything yet. The gift box sits there between us like a physical reminder of the problem we need to solve. I pull the wrapping paper off the box and lift the lid. Inside is a framed photo of Jessica and Alex at their high school prom. They're both dressed up, Alex in a tux that's slightly too big, and Jessica in a blue dress with her hair curled. They look so young and happy. Alex leans over my shoulder to see what it is and goes completely still. I watch his face as he stares at the photo. His jaw tightens and something changes in his eyes, like he's seeing something for the first time instead of just looking at an old memory. He reaches out and takes the frame from my hands, turning it over to check if there's anything written on the back. There's nothing. Just the photo of the two of them from 15 years ago, strategically chosen and wrapped and delivered to our house on our anniversary. The message is clear without any words needed. Jessica wants him to remember when it was just the two of them, before I existed in his life. Alex sets the frame face down on the coffee table and rubs his hands over his face. He sits there quiet for a long minute before he starts talking. He tells me he's been making excuses for Jessica's behavior for years because she's always been intense and he just got used to it. He says managing her feelings became normal and he learned it was easier to just go along with what she wanted than deal with the fallout. I listen without interrupting because I can tell he needs to get this out. He talks about high school, how Jessica would threaten to hurt herself whenever he tried to hang out with other friends without including her. She'd call him crying in the middle of the night saying she took pills or cut herself and he'd panic and rush over. It always turned out to be nothing serious or sometimes completely made up, but it trained him to drop everything when she said she needed him. He learned early that excluding her meant dealing with manufactured emergencies and guilt trips that lasted for weeks. It became easier to just bring her along to everything than face the aftermath of leaving her out. I feel sick listening to this. I ask him if he realizes that what he's describing is manipulation, not friendship. He gets defensive immediately, saying Jessica had a rough childhood and he was her only stable relationship. Her parents fought constantly and her dad left when she was in middle school. She latched onto Alex and his family because they gave her the stability she didn't have at home. I tell him I understand that her childhood was hard, but explaining her behavior isn't the same as excusing it. I say his loyalty to her, while coming from a good place, has enabled her to never develop healthy ways of dealing with her emotions or respecting other people's boundaries. She's 30 years old and still using the same tactics she used in high school because they keep working on him. Alex argues that I don't understand how bad things were for her growing up. I cut him off and say that plenty of people have difficult childhoods and don't assault their best friend's fiancé during a proposal. Trauma doesn't give someone the right to traumatize other people. His jaw clenches, but he doesn't respond right away. We sit there in tense silence with that prom photo between us like evidence in a trial. I check the time on my phone and it's almost 9. I tell Alex we need to talk through specific examples because I don't think he sees the full pattern yet. He nods and settles back into the couch cushions looking exhausted. I start with the easy stuff, the constant emergencies that always seem to happen during our dates. Alex tries to defend it at first, saying Jessica does have anxiety and sometimes she really does need support. I ask him to think about the timing. Every single time we had plans, especially important ones, Jessica would have a crisis. Our first anniversary dinner got interrupted because she called crying about a fight with her mom. The night we were going to look at apartments together, she needed him to come fix her sink immediately. When we went to his company holiday party, she texted 15 times about being depressed and alone. Alex goes quiet as I list them out. I can see him thinking back through the memories and recognizing what he missed before. I bring up how she always showed up at the same restaurants and movies we went to. He tries to say it was coincidence at first, that they have similar taste. I remind him about the bowling incident where she claimed she and her cousin had plans there for weeks, but her cousin looked completely confused when they arrived. I mention how Jessica always knew where we'd be even when Alex didn't tell her directly, how she must have been checking his location or credit card statements or social media. The showing up wasn't random. It was surveillance. Alex's face goes pale. He admits he gave her access to his location sharing years ago when they were in college, so she could find him at parties if she got separated from her friends. He never turned it off. I ask if he's checked whether she still has access, and he pulls out his phone immediately. His hands shake a little as he opens the settings. She's still there in his location sharing list. He stares at it for a long moment before removing her access. I move on to the housewarming visit, how she spent 3 hours reorganizing his stuff and pointing out everything I was doing wrong. Alex starts to defend it, saying she was just trying to help, but then he stops himself. He remembers how she positioned his college trophies in the most prominent spots and put away the photos of us that I'd unpacked. She wasn't helping. She was marking territory, making sure the apartment felt more like his and Jessica's shared space than his and mine. He looks genuinely disturbed as the pieces click together. The Sunday breakfasts where she'd remake anything I cooked and leave messes for me to clean up. The way she'd sit between us on the couch and put her feet in his lap. how she'd call me insecure for wanting to sit next to my own boyfriend. Alex keeps saying he thought she was just being Jessica, that her intensity was part of who she was and he'd accepted it. I tell him that's exactly the problem. He normalized behavior that should have been addressed 15 years ago, and now we're dealing with a 30-year-old woman who pulled my hair during a proposal because she couldn't handle not being the center of his attention. We talk until midnight, going through incident after incident from our 3 years together. The constant emergencies always happened during our important moments. The showing up places was never actually coincidence. The reorganizing his stuff in our home was about establishing her claim on him. Every single thing Jessica did had a pattern and a purpose, and Alex looks more and more shaken as he recognizes it all laid out in front of him. He finally admits he needs to talk to a therapist about this. He says he wants to understand why he struggled so much with setting boundaries with Jessica when he has no problem saying no to anyone else. I feel a wave of hope mixed with complete exhaustion. I know this is just the beginning of a long process, and that Jessica won't accept being cut off without putting up a massive fight. Alex reaches over and takes my hand, promising he's going to figure this out. I believe he means it right now, but I also know that 15 years of conditioning doesn't disappear after one conversation. The next morning, I wake up before Alex and go into the kitchen to make coffee. I need to talk to someone who's been through this before. I call my sister Gwyneth while the coffee brews. She answers on the third ring, sounding half asleep. I apologize for calling early, but tell her I need advice about the Jessica situation. Gwyneth wakes up immediately and asks what happened. I fill her in on the anniversary ambush and the prom photo, and the long conversation Alex and I had last night. Gwyneth went through something similar with her husband's possessive female friend about 5 years ago. She tells me the friend didn't stop testing boundaries until they'd maintained firm consequences for over a year. She warns me to prepare for Jessica to escalate before she accepts the new reality. People like Jessica don't give up easily when they lose control of someone they consider theirs. Gwyneth asks me the question I've been avoiding asking myself. Is Alex genuinely committed to change, or is he just trying to appease me to avoid conflict? I tell her about last night's conversation and how he agreed to find a therapist. Gwyneth says those are good signs, but the real test will be how he responds the next time Jessica creates a crisis. She tells me to watch his actions, not his words. It's easy to agree to boundaries when Jessica isn't actively pushing against them. I thank her for the reality check and promise to keep her updated. After we hang up, I sit at the kitchen table with my coffee and think about what comes next. Monday morning, I go to work feeling like I didn't sleep at all, even though I got 7 hours. My coworker Lila notices immediately when I sit down at my desk. She comes over and asks if everything's okay with the wedding planning. I haven't told anyone at work the full story about Jessica because it sounds so crazy when I try to explain it. But Lila seems genuinely concerned, and I'm tired of holding it all in. I end up telling her everything. The proposal meltdown where Jessica pulled my hair in front of both our families, the security escort, the rushed wedding to Rob that ended in divorce after 3 months, Jessica showing up at our house on our anniversary with that prom photo. Lila's jaw literally drops when I describe the hair pulling. She asks if I called the police, and I explain that we just wanted her gone, that pressing charges would have made everything worse. Lila shakes her head and says she can't believe someone would do that at a proposal. I tell her that's just the most dramatic incident in a 3-year pattern of boundary violations. Lila mentions that her husband Dominic is a therapist who specializes in relationship issues. She offers to ask him for recommendations for someone who deals with codependent friendships. I thank her and admit I'm worried about whether Alex will actually follow through with therapy, or if he'll cancel once Jessica pulls him back in with some emergency. Lila promises to text Dominic during his lunch break and get back to me with names. That evening, Alex comes home from work carrying takeout from the Thai place we both like. He sets the food on the counter and tells me he found a therapist who has an opening next week. He's already scheduled an intake appointment without me having to remind him or push him to do it. I feel a wave of relief that he's taking initiative. He says he's been thinking about what I said last night about enabling Jessica, and he realizes I'm right about the pattern. He looks tired but determined, like he's finally ready to do the work instead of just talking about doing it. We eat dinner, and Alex tells me more about the therapist he found. The guy specializes in codependency and boundary issues. Alex found him through his insurance website and read reviews before calling. I'm impressed that he did the research himself instead of waiting for me to handle it. It feels like a real step forward. After dinner, we watch a movie, and Alex keeps his phone on silent the whole time. It's a small thing, but it matters. Usually he'd check it constantly in case Jessica needed something. Tonight, he ignores it completely and focuses on us. The next morning, I wake up to Alex already dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone in his hands. He looks tired, like he didn't sleep much. I ask what's wrong, and he shows me his screen. Jessica has sent him 12 text messages since midnight. I sit up and read through them. The first few are about random memories from high school. Remember when we snuck into the football field at midnight? Remember that time we drove to the beach at 2 in the morning? Remember when you helped me study for the SATs? Then they shift to questions. Why are you ignoring me? Did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me? The last few are more desperate. I miss my best friend. Please just talk to me. I don't understand what happened. Alex scrolls back up and shows me there are more from the days before. 30 messages total over 3 days. I tell him this is exactly what we talked about, her refusing to accept boundaries. He nods and says he knows, but seeing it all laid out like this makes it feel more real. We sit together on the bed and talk about how to respond. I suggest he send one clear message instead of continuing to ignore her because the silence is obviously making her ramp up. Alex agrees and starts typing. He shows me the draft before sending. It says he needs space to focus on his marriage and that showing up at our house was inappropriate and won't happen again. He asks if it's too harsh and I tell him it's direct but fair. He hits send and we both stare at the phone waiting for her response. It takes less than 2 minutes. The phone starts ringing with Jessica's name on the screen. Alex declines the call. It rings again immediately. He declines again. Then the texts start coming in rapid succession. I watch them pop up one after another. Are you serious right now? You're choosing her over 15 years of friendship. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Alex sets the phone face down on the nightstand, but we can still hear it buzzing. The calls keep coming every few seconds. After the 5th declined call, the texts change tone. I'm having a panic attack. I can't breathe. I need you to come over right now. Please, Alex, I'm serious. I can't breathe. My chest hurts. I'm scared. Please don't ignore me. I look at Alex and his face has gone pale. He picks up the phone and stares at the messages. His hand is actually shaking. I watch him struggle with himself, his finger hovering over the call button. He tells me he knows this is manipulation, but his body doesn't care. He says it feels like someone he loves is actually dying, and every instinct is screaming at him to go help her. I can see sweat on his forehead. He's breathing faster. I put my hand on his arm and ask him what his therapist would say about this. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. He says the therapist would probably tell him that Jessica has survived every previous crisis without him, and she'll survive this one too. But his hands keep shaking. I suggest calling for a wellness check instead of going over there himself. Alex looks at me like he hadn't considered that option. He asks if that's really okay to do. I tell him it means he cares about her safety without being her personal emergency responder, which is exactly the kind of boundary he needs to practice. He nods slowly and pulls up the non-emergency police number. I watch him make the call. He explains the situation calmly. He says his friend is texting about a panic attack and chest pain and he's concerned but can't go check on her himself due to boundary issues. He gives them Jessica's address. The dispatcher says they'll send someone over. Alex hangs up and puts the phone down. We sit in silence for a few minutes. His hands are still shaking but less than before. The phone buzzes with more texts from Jessica, but he doesn't look at them. 20 minutes later, the phone rings with an unknown number. Alex answers, and it's the officer who did the wellness check. The officer says Jessica is fine and was surprised by the police showing up. She told them she was texting a friend but wasn't actually in medical distress. The officer's tone suggests he's dealt with this kind of situation before. Alex thanks him and hangs up. He looks relieved but also guilty. He tells me he feels bad for sending cops to her apartment. I remind him that she claimed to be having a medical emergency, and he responded appropriately by calling professionals instead of rushing over himself. He knows I'm right, but I can see the guilt eating at him anyway. The phone buzzes again. More texts from Jessica. Alex looks at the screen and his expression changes from guilty to angry. I lean over to read them. She's furious. I can't believe you sent cops to my apartment like I'm some crazy person. You've changed into someone I don't even recognize. You abandon people when they need you most. Remember when I was there for you after your dad's surgery? Remember when I helped you through your breakup with Sarah? Remember when I drove you to the hospital when you broke your arm? You promised you'd always be there for me. You promised. The messages keep coming. She's weaponizing every time he helped her, every moment of their friendship, using his compassion against him. I watch Alex read through them and see his face crumble. He looks like he might cry. I take the phone from his hands and set it aside. I tell him she's doing exactly what manipulative people do when boundaries don't work, making him feel guilty for protecting himself. He nods but won't look at me. He says he knows it's manipulation, but it still hurts. He says 15 years of friendship doesn't just disappear because he recognizes the pattern now. I hold his hand, and we sit there together while his phone continues buzzing with messages he doesn't read. Thursday comes and Alex has his first therapy appointment. He leaves work early, and I wait at home trying not to think about what he's telling the therapist. He comes back 3 hours later looking completely drained. His eyes are red like he's been crying. But there's also something different about his posture, like a weight has shifted even if it hasn't been removed. I ask how it went and he sits down heavily on the couch. He tells me the therapist helped him see that Jessica's crises always happen during his important moments. The proposal, obviously, but also when he got promoted at work. Jessica had a family emergency that same week. When we went on our first vacation together, Jessica's car broke down, and she needed him to help her deal with the mechanic. When he told her we were moving in together, she had a medical scare that turned out to be nothing. The therapist laid out the pattern, and Alex says hearing it from a professional made it feel more real than when I said the same things. He sounds almost amazed that he never noticed before. The therapist also talked about enmeshment and codependency, and how Jessica trained him from high school to prioritize her emotional needs above his own. Alex tells me the therapist asked if he ever felt like he couldn't make major life decisions without considering Jessica's reaction first, and Alex realized the answer was yes. He'd been planning his life around her feelings for 15 years without even noticing. Over the next 2 weeks, Jessica tries different approaches. The crisis texts stop after the wellness check didn't work. Instead, she sends funny memes like nothing happened, inside jokes from high school, casual messages about her day. She acts like their conversation about boundaries never occurred. Alex shows me every message, and I can see how much effort it takes him not to respond. He tells me it would be so easy to just reply to one meme, to laugh at one joke, to slip back into the comfortable pattern. But he doesn't. He lets every message sit unread after showing it to me. I watch him fight against 15 years of conditioning with every ignored text. His therapist tells him this is the hardest part, maintaining the boundary when the other person is being nice instead of dramatic. It's easier to stay strong against someone screaming than someone acting like your best friend. Alex says it feels like mourning someone who's still alive. He misses the friendship he thought he had, even though he knows now it was never actually healthy. 2 weeks after his first therapy session, we decide to have a do-over anniversary celebration. We pick a nice Italian place downtown that we've been to before. I wear the dress I was going to wear on our actual anniversary before Jessica showed up. Alex makes the reservation for 7. We get there right on time, and the hostess seats us at a quiet table near the back. The restaurant is busy but not crowded. We order wine and look at the menus. Alex reaches across the table and takes my hand. He tells me he's proud of us for not letting Jessica control where we go anymore. I squeeze his hand back. We're halfway through our appetizer when I see her walk in. Jessica, with Elena, her cousin, right behind her. My whole body tenses. Alex sees my expression change and turns to look. Jessica hasn't noticed us yet. She's talking to the hostess. I feel my appetite disappear completely. Alex turns back to me and I can see him making a decision. He squeezes my hand tighter and tells me we're not leaving. He says Jessica doesn't get to control where we go or what we do anymore. I appreciate the sentiment, but my heart is racing. I watch Jessica and Elena get seated at a table across the room. Then Jessica turns and sees us. Her face lights up. She starts walking toward our table. Alex lets go of my hand and stands up. I've never seen him confront her in public before. Jessica gets about halfway to us when Alex quietly tells her she needs to leave us alone, or he'll ask the restaurant to have her escorted out. His voice is calm but firm. Jessica stops walking. She looks genuinely shocked that he's standing up to her in front of other people. Elena catches up and grabs Jessica's arm. She apologizes to us and starts pulling Jessica back toward their table. Jessica lets herself be led away, but she's staring at Alex the whole time with this confused, hurt expression. They sit down across the room and I can see Jessica talking rapidly to Elena. Alex sits back down and picks up his wine glass. His hand is steady. He tells me that felt good. I tell him I'm proud of him even though I can barely eat now knowing she's watching us. 5 minutes later, Elena comes back to our table alone. She apologizes again and says she didn't know we'd be here. She says Jessica saw our car in the parking lot and insisted on staying once she realized we were inside. Elena looks embarrassed. She tells us Jessica has been obsessing over Alex for weeks. She says the whole family is worried about Jessica's mental state. She's not eating properly. She's not sleeping. She talks about Alex constantly. Elena says she's tried to get Jessica to see someone, but Jessica insists everyone else is the problem. I appreciate Elena's honesty, even though this conversation is uncomfortable. She tells us she'll make sure Jessica doesn't bother us for the rest of dinner, and then goes back to her table. I watch her sit down and say something firm to Jessica. Jessica crosses her arms and won't look at us anymore. Alex and I finish our dinner without any more interruptions, but I can feel Jessica's presence across the room the entire time. Elena looks at me with this sad expression and tells me something that makes everything click into place. She says Jessica's marriage to Rob fell apart because Jessica talked about Alex constantly. Every single day, she compared everything Rob did to how Alex would have done it better. Rob tried cooking dinner and Jessica said Alex made better pasta. Rob tried planning a date and Jessica said Alex knew better restaurants. Rob bought her flowers and Jessica said Alex always knew her favorite colors. Elena says Rob told Jessica's mom that being married to Jessica felt like being a stand-in for someone else. He said he couldn't compete with a 15-year fantasy. Suddenly, Jessica's quick divorce makes complete sense. She wasn't actually trying to move on. She was using Rob as a placeholder until Alex came back to her. I feel a weird mix of sympathy for Rob and validation that I'm not crazy for seeing Jessica's obsession. We finish our dinner without any more interruptions, but I catch Jessica staring at us several times from across the room. Each time I look over, she's watching Alex with this intense focus that makes my skin crawl. She's not even pretending to pay attention to Elena anymore, just staring. When we finally leave the restaurant and get to the car, Alex reaches over and squeezes my hand. He tells me he's proud of how we handled that as a team. He says his therapist has been helping him see that protecting our marriage isn't betraying Jessica. It's choosing appropriate priorities. I lean over and kiss him because hearing him say that means everything. We drive home and I feel closer to him than I have in months. The next day I'm at work when my phone buzzes with a text from a number I don't recognize. It's Elena. The message surprises me since we've only met briefly at that bowling incident months ago. She says she got my number from the family group chat and wants to tell me something about Jessica's history. Something that might help me understand what we're dealing with. She asks if I can meet for coffee sometime this week. I stare at my phone for a minute, wondering what she knows that she couldn't say at the restaurant. I text back and we agree to meet Thursday afternoon at a coffee shop near my office. Thursday comes and I'm nervous walking into the coffee shop. Elena is already there at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She stands up and hugs me, which feels weird since we barely know each other. We sit down and she jumps right in. She tells me that Jessica has had this pattern with Alex since high school. Not just with me, with every girl he ever dated. Jessica would sabotage his relationships and create drama whenever he got close to someone. Elena says she watched it happen over and over. Jessica would befriend Alex's girlfriends at first, then slowly turn possessive. She'd manufacture reasons why the girlfriend wasn't good enough. She'd create situations where Alex had to choose between the girlfriend and her. Every single relationship ended the same way. The girlfriend would eventually give up trying to compete with Jessica's constant presence. Elena says the family assumed Alex and Jessica would eventually just end up together, since she'd successfully driven everyone else away. They thought it was inevitable. I ask Elena why the family enabled this behavior instead of setting boundaries. Why didn't anyone tell Jessica to back off? Elena looks down at her coffee cup and admits they thought it was sweet that Jessica was so devoted. They didn't realize how unhealthy it was until they saw her meltdown at our proposal. She says watching Jessica physically assault me and claim the proposal didn't count without her approval finally made them see the truth. This wasn't devotion. This was obsession. Elena tells me that several family members have apologized to Alex's ex-girlfriends since then, reaching out to say they understand now why those relationships failed. One of his exes told them she'd tried to explain Jessica's behavior years ago, but nobody believed her. Everyone thought she was just jealous. Elena leans forward and tells me something else. Jessica's parents are pressuring her to see a therapist, but she refuses. She insists that everyone else is the problem, that I manipulated Alex into abandoning his real friends, that his family turned against her for no reason. Jessica truly believes she has more claim to Alex than I do because of their longer history. Elena says Jessica talks about it constantly. She's waiting for our marriage to fail so things can go back to normal. She's convinced that once the honeymoon phase ends, Alex will realize he made a mistake and come back to her. It's disturbing how delusional she is, how she can't see that her behavior is the problem. I thank Elena for telling me all this, for being honest about the family's role in enabling Jessica for so long. She reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. She says the family supports our boundaries with Jessica even though it's creating tension at family gatherings. Jessica's parents are upset that she's being excluded. They think everyone is being too hard on her. But Elena promises to run interference when possible. She makes me promise not to tell Jessica about our coffee meeting. Jessica would see it as betrayal, and Elena doesn't want to deal with the fallout. I feel grateful to have at least one person in Alex's extended circle who sees the situation clearly. Someone who understands why we need these boundaries. That evening, I tell Alex about my conversation with Elena. We're sitting on the couch and I watch his face as I explain everything she told me. About the pattern with his ex-girlfriends. About the family assuming he and Jessica would end up together. About Jessica refusing therapy and waiting for our marriage to fail. Alex is quiet for a long time. He stares at the wall with this pained expression. Finally, he tells me he feels guilty that his inability to set boundaries earlier meant all his ex-girlfriends dealt with Jessica's sabotage. He wonders out loud if he subconsciously let Jessica drive them away because it was easier than confronting her. I tell him that recognizing the pattern now is what matters for our future. That he can't change the past, but he can make different choices going forward. He nods, but I can tell he's still processing. Still feeling guilty about the damage his avoidance caused. The next week, Alex's mom calls him. I'm in the kitchen when I hear his side of the conversation. His mom asks if we can come to Sunday dinner. She says she wants to talk about the Jessica situation as a family. Alex looks at me with nervous eyes and I nod. He agrees to come. After he hangs up, he admits he's worried they're going to try to convince us to reconcile with Jessica for the sake of family harmony. That they'll say we're being too harsh. That Jessica just needs time and understanding. I prepare myself for the possibility of having to defend our boundaries to his parents. For having to explain why we can't just forgive and forget. We spend the rest of the week anxious about Sunday. Sunday arrives and we drive to his parents' house in tense silence. Alex's hand is tight on the steering wheel. We walk up to the front door and his mom opens it before we can knock. She hugs us both and leads us to the dining room where his dad is already sitting. The table is set for 4. No extra places. At least Jessica isn't here. We sit down and his mom brings out food. Nobody talks about Jessica during the meal. We make small talk about work and the weather. Finally, after we finish eating, his mom clears her throat. She looks at Alex and then at me. She tells us she wants to apologize for enabling Jessica's behavior for years, for not recognizing how inappropriate it was. She says that after the proposal incident, she started looking back at family photos and events. Jessica was in almost everything, positioned next to Alex like a spouse, in the front row of family pictures, sitting next to him at holiday dinners, always touching him or leaning on him. His mom says they normalized something very unhealthy. They treated Jessica like she was already part of the family and never considered how that affected Alex's actual relationships. She has tears in her eyes when she finishes talking. Alex's dad clears his throat and leans forward with his elbows on the table. He says they thought Jessica was harmless all these years, that her attachment to Alex was just her way of dealing with her difficult home life growing up. Her parents fought constantly and eventually divorced when she was in middle school. Alex was her stability during all that chaos. They figured she'd grow out of needing him so much once she built her own life. He looks directly at Alex and says they feel guilty for not protecting his relationships better, for making his girlfriends feel like they had to compete with Jessica for space in the family. His voice cracks a little when he admits they prioritized Jessica's feelings over the feelings of women Alex was actually trying to build a future with. I look at Alex and see tears running down his face. He wipes them away quickly, but more come. His dad reaches across the table and squeezes his shoulder. Says he's sorry for not seeing what was really happening until it was too late to save those other relationships. That they should have stepped in years ago instead of treating Jessica like she had more right to Alex than his actual partners did. Alex's mom takes over talking and her voice is firm but gentle. She says Jessica is no longer invited to family events, that they told her directly last week that her behavior at the proposal was unacceptable, and they support our marriage completely. Jessica cried and said they were abandoning her after treating her like family for 15 years. Alex's mom admits it was hard to have that conversation. They do care about Jessica after knowing her so long. She was at every holiday and birthday. She was in their vacation photos. She called them on Mother's Day and Father's Day. But their loyalty needs to be with their son and his wife now. Not with someone who assaulted me and tried to sabotage our engagement. She looks at me when she says this, and I feel my throat get tight. Finally being prioritized by his family after months of feeling like the outsider means more than I expected it to. Alex reaches under the table and takes my hand. We drive home in silence, but it's a comfortable silence this time. Not the anxious kind from the drive there. Alex parks in our driveway and turns to me before we get out. Says he's grateful his parents finally understand. That he was scared they'd try to convince us to forgive Jessica and let her back in. I tell him I was scared of the same thing. We sit in the car for a few more minutes just holding hands. Over the next month, Jessica's attempts to contact Alex become less frequent, but more intense when they do happen. She sends long text messages about their friendship and how much she misses him. One message lists every inside joke they ever had. Another describes in detail the day they met in high school biology class. A third talks about how empty her life feels without her best person in it. Alex shows me each message as it comes in. He doesn't respond to any of them. His therapist sessions are helping him process the guilt and grief of ending a friendship that was never actually healthy. He comes home from therapy looking drained but also more settled each week. I watch him slowly become less reactive to her messages. The first few made his hands shake. Now he just reads them and deletes them without much emotion on his face. I notice Alex is sleeping better. He used to toss and turn all night and wake up tired. Now he falls asleep quickly and stays asleep until morning. He seems more relaxed at home, too. He laughs more, makes jokes, doesn't check his phone every 5 minutes like he's waiting for an emergency. One night, while we're making dinner together, he tells me his therapist has been helping him understand that real friendship shouldn't feel like hostage negotiation. That Jessica's love was always conditional on him prioritizing her above everyone else, including himself. No. He says he thought that's just how close friendships worked, because that's all he'd ever known with her. His therapist pointed out that he has other friends who don't make him feel guilty for having a life outside them. That healthy people are happy when their friends find romantic partners and build families. We get a wedding invitation in the mail from Owen, Alex's college friend who moved across the country years ago for a job. Alex gets excited when he sees the envelope, rips it open right there by the mailbox. Owen's wedding is in 2 months in California. Alex immediately pulls out his phone and texts Owen that we'll be there. I watch his face light up in a way I haven't seen in months. He talks about Owen while we walk into the house, how they were roommates sophomore year, how they stayed up late talking about their futures. How Owen was one of the few friends from college who wasn't connected to Jessica in any way. He RSVPs yes for both of us that same evening, pays for our flights without even checking with me first because he's so excited to reconnect with someone from his past who isn't tangled up in Jessica drama. Jessica somehow finds out about Owen's wedding 3 days later. She texts Alex asking if he's really going to celebrate someone else's relationship while abandoning his oldest friend. Says Owen barely knows him anymore after living across the country for 5 years. That real friends stick around through hard times instead of flying off to party with people who forgot about them. Alex shows me the message and we both recognize the manipulation attempt immediately. The guilt trip. The possessive language about being his oldest friend like that gives her ownership. The implication that attending a wedding means he's betraying her. Alex stares at his phone for a long moment. Then he opens his contacts and blocks her number. Just like that. He shows me the blocked contact screen and says his therapist told him it's okay to take that step. That blocking isn't cruel when someone refuses to respect boundaries after clear communication. Jessica starts trying to reach Alex through social media and email after being blocked. She sends friend requests on platforms where they weren't connected, messages him on apps he barely uses, emails him from different addresses when he blocks the first one. We spend an evening adjusting privacy settings on everything, making his profiles private, turning off message requests from non-friends, creating email filters to automatically delete anything from her addresses. It feels extreme but also necessary, like we're building a fortress to keep her out. Alex says his therapist validated that blocking is appropriate when someone refuses to respect boundaries after clear communication. That we're not being cruel. We're protecting our peace and our marriage. We attend Owen's wedding on a sunny Saturday in San Diego. The ceremony is on a beach with the ocean behind the altar. Alex reconnects with several college friends during the cocktail hour. They all hug him and say they're glad to see him. One guy named Tyler pulled Alex aside while I was getting drinks. I watched them talk seriously for a few minutes. When Alex comes back, he looks thoughtful. Says Tyler told him everyone's glad to see him without Jessica hovering nearby. That they'd all noticed Jessica's controlling behavior back in college, but didn't know how to bring it up without causing drama. Tyler said Jessica would show up to their group hangouts even when she wasn't invited. Would text Alex constantly during guys' nights. Would get upset if Alex made plans that didn't include her. Alex realizes how much Jessica's presence isolated him from other friendships. How people stopped inviting him places because they knew Jessica would either come along or cause problems if she wasn't included. At the wedding reception, Alex is relaxed and genuinely happy in a way I haven't seen him at social events before. He dances with me during the slow songs, laughs with old friends at our table, doesn't check his phone anxiously every few minutes. We dance to upbeat songs and he spins me around, making me dizzy and laughing. He tells me later while we're walking back to our hotel that he didn't realize how much energy he'd been spending managing Jessica's reactions. That every social event used to involve calculating whether Jessica would be upset he went without her. Whether he'd have to deal with angry texts or emergency calls during the event. Whether she'd show up uninvited and make things awkward. Being free of that weight feels incredible. Like he can finally just exist and enjoy moments without constantly monitoring someone else's emotional state. Owen pulls us aside before we leave the reception. The party is winding down and people are saying goodbye. Owen hugs Alex hard and says he's proud of him for finally setting boundaries with Jessica. That he watched her sabotage Alex's relationships for years. He mentions that everyone in their college friend group had bets on whether Alex would ever escape Jessica's orbit. It's said jokingly, but there's real relief in his voice that Alex finally did. Owen says he lost touch with Alex partly because Jessica made it so hard to maintain the friendship. That every time they tried to plan a visit, Jessica would create some crisis that needed Alex's attention. That phone calls were cut short by her emergencies. That it was exhausting trying to be friends with someone who had another person controlling his schedule and emotional bandwidth. Alex looks sad hearing this, but also understanding. He apologizes for letting Jessica drive away good friendships. Owen claps him on the shoulder and says what matters is that Alex figured it out now. That he's building a healthy marriage and that's worth celebrating. We fly home from Owen's wedding and I feel different somehow. Lighter. Alex holds my hand during the flight and doesn't check his phone once. He looks out the window and tells me how good it felt to just be himself at the reception, without worrying about managing someone else's emotions. I squeeze his hand and tell him I noticed. That he seemed genuinely happy instead of constantly on edge. Nah. He says his therapist has been preparing him for the possibility that Jessica might escalate around significant dates or events. Our anniversary is coming up in 3 months. But he feels ready to handle it with the tools he's learned. I ask what kind of tools, and he explains breathing techniques for when he feels guilty. Ways to recognize manipulation tactics. How to sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of immediately trying to fix them. It sounds simple, but I can tell it's been hard work for him. Our actual first anniversary arrives 3 months after Jessica's last contact attempt. We book a bed and breakfast 2 hours away to ensure privacy. Alex turns his phone completely off for the weekend. Not on silent, not face down on the nightstand, completely powered off and left in the car. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. He would have checked it every 30 minutes just in case Jessica needed something. Now he tells me he wants to focus entirely on us without any Jessica-related stress. The bed and breakfast is this old farmhouse with a wraparound porch and fields that go on forever. We spend Saturday morning walking the property and eating breakfast on the porch. Alex is relaxed in a way I've rarely seen him. His shoulders aren't tight. He laughs easily. We talk about everything except Jessica, and it feels amazing to have a conversation that doesn't circle back to her eventually. During our anniversary weekend, Alex tells me he's been processing a lot of grief about losing what he thought was his oldest friendship. We're sitting on the porch swing at sunset, and he just starts talking. He says he's been realizing it was actually 15 years of manipulation. That Jessica never wanted him to be happy or successful or independent. She wanted him to need her. He says he mourns the friendship he thought he had with her. The person he believed she was. But he's also angry at her for making him believe her possessiveness was love and loyalty. His voice cracks when he talks about all the relationships she sabotaged, all the opportunities he missed because he was busy managing her crises. I hold him while he works through those complicated feelings. He cries a little and apologizes for crying. I tell him he doesn't need to apologize. That grief is normal even when the thing you're grieving was toxic. We return home from our anniversary trip to find a letter from Jessica in our mailbox. My stomach drops when I see her handwriting on the envelope. Alex takes it from me and immediately walks to the outdoor trash can and throws it away without reading it. I follow him outside and ask if he's sure. He says his therapist warned this might happen. That reading it would only give Jessica power. That the healthiest thing is to maintain the boundary without engaging with her attempts to break it. I watch him close the trash can lid and walk back inside. His hands are shaking slightly, but his face is determined. I feel proud of him and also relieved that he didn't even hesitate. I ask Alex if he's curious about what the letter said. We're unpacking our bags and putting laundry in the washer. He stops and thinks about it. He admits he is curious. That part of him wants to know what she wrote. But that curiosity isn't a good enough reason to undo months of progress. He says Jessica knows him well enough to write exactly what would pull him back in. That reading it would be like an alcoholic deciding to have just one drink. He loads the washer and starts it running. I'm impressed by his self-awareness, by how clearly he can see the trap now. 6 months ago, he would have read that letter immediately and probably responded to it. Elena texts me 2 days later to warn that Jessica has been talking about trying to reconcile with Alex. She says the family is concerned Jessica might show up at our house again. I thank her for the heads up and go find Alex. He's in the home office doing work emails. I show him Elena's text and watch his expression. He sighs and says we should install a doorbell camera so we have a record if Jessica violates our boundaries again. I'm surprised he suggests it before I do. We order one that same evening and Alex installs it the next day. He tests it from his phone and shows me how to check the feed. Now we'll know if she shows up even when we're not home. 2 weeks later, the doorbell camera alerts us that someone is at the door. It's a Saturday morning and we're making breakfast together. Alex checks the app on his phone and his face goes tight. He turns the screen toward me. Jessica is standing on our porch with another gift wrapped in silver paper. Alex and I look at each other and he says we're not answering. We watch through the camera as Jessica rings the doorbell again. She waits. She looks directly at the camera like she knows we're watching. She shifts the gift from one hand to the other. She rings the doorbell a third time. We watch her stand there for 5 full minutes before she finally sets the gift down on the porch mat and walks away. Alex saves the video footage to his phone. Evidence of another boundary violation. Alex brings the gift inside after Jessica drives away. We open it together at the kitchen table. Inside is a scrapbook Jessica made of their 15-year friendship. It's filled with photos and mementos and notes about memories they shared, pictures from high school dances, ticket stubs from movies, notes passed in class. Every page has Jessica's handwriting explaining the memory and why it mattered. It's simultaneously touching and deeply manipulative. Alex flips through it with a sad expression. He gets to a page with photos from a family vacation where Jessica came along. His parents and Jessica all smiling at the beach. He closes the scrapbook and sits there for a minute. Then he stands up and carries it to the garage. He puts it in a cardboard box on a high shelf. He tells me he's not ready to throw it away but also can't keep it in the house. I understand. It's evidence of 15 years that actually happened, even if the friendship wasn't what he thought it was. Alex emails Jessica one final message that evening. He types it at the kitchen table with me sitting next to him. He says that he appreciates their history, but that her inability to respect boundaries means they can't have any kind of relationship. That further contact attempts will be considered harassment. He reads it out loud to me before sending. I tell him it's clear and firm without being cruel. He copies me on the email so I can see exactly what he said. Then he blocks her email address too. He closes his laptop and looks at me. He says he feels like we've finally reached a place of real partnership in handling this. That he's not trying to protect Jessica's feelings at the expense of our marriage anymore. I hug him and tell him I'm proud of how far he's come. Jessica doesn't respond to Alex's final email. Her contact attempts stop completely after that. It's both relieving and slightly unsettling. We keep waiting for another escalation. For her to show up at his work or at our house in the middle of the night. But weeks pass and nothing happens. Alex brings it up at his therapy appointment and his therapist says this might be Jessica finally accepting reality. Or it might be her regrouping for a different approach. That we should stay vigilant but also try to live our lives without constant anxiety about her next move. Alex tells me this while we're getting ready for bed. I ask him how he feels about it. He says he's relieved but also doesn't quite trust it. That 15 years of patterns don't just stop overnight, but that he's going to try to focus on building our life together instead of constantly looking over his shoulder. The first month without Jessica felt strange, like waiting for a storm that never came. I kept checking my phone expecting her texts. Alex would tense up every time the doorbell rang, but nothing happened. No messages, no surprise visits, no manufactured emergencies. We started sleeping better. Alex stopped having that hunted look he'd worn for months. His therapy appointments continued every Thursday, and he'd come home talking about patterns he'd never noticed before. How he'd learned to manage Jessica's emotions instead of his own. How he'd confused her need for him with actual friendship. He started reconnecting with his college friends through group chats and video calls. People he'd lost touch with because Jessica always monopolized his time. By the second month, I noticed he was laughing more. Making plans without checking if Jessica might show up. We went to movies and restaurants without that constant anxiety. He joined a softball league with guys from work. Started going to happy hours again. Things he'd stopped doing because Jessica would call with a crisis every time. The therapy was working. He set boundaries with his mom when she tried to guilt him about family stuff. He told his coworker no when she asked him to cover her shift for the third time. Small things, but they mattered. 3 months in, we were having breakfast when Elena texted me. Jessica had a new boyfriend, some guy named Ryan she'd met at her gym. Elena said Jessica was already acting the same way with him that she'd acted with Alex. Constant texts, showing up at his apartment unannounced, getting upset when he made plans without her. The family was worried she'd destroy this relationship too. Elena said Jessica's mom had begged her to see a therapist, but Jessica refused. She kept insisting that Alex and I were the problem, that we'd abandoned her, that she'd done nothing wrong. I showed Alex the texts and he just shook his head. He said he felt bad for Ryan but also relieved it wasn't his problem anymore. That he'd spent 15 years trying to fix Jessica and it had almost cost him everything. We talked about whether we should warn Ryan somehow but decided against it. Jessica would just use it as proof we were obsessed with her. Our second anniversary approached and Alex suggested we go back to the restaurant where Jessica had interrupted our do-over celebration. I hesitated but he said he wanted to reclaim it, to prove we weren't hiding from her anymore. So we made a reservation for the same table in the garden area. The night was perfect, warm but not too hot with string lights overhead. We ordered wine and appetizers and Alex held my hand across the table. No one interrupted us. No dramatic entrances or manufactured crises. Just us celebrating 2 years of marriage. Alex told me he finally felt like himself again, like he could just be a husband without being someone's emotional support system. He said the therapy had helped him understand that real love doesn't require constant sacrifice. That healthy relationships have boundaries and respect. I told him I was proud of how hard he'd worked to change those patterns. That I knew it wasn't easy breaking free from 15 years of conditioning. We stayed until the restaurant closed, talking about our future. We'd started looking at houses in neighborhoods with good schools. Talking about maybe trying for a baby next year. Things we couldn't have planned before because Jessica's chaos took up all our mental space. Life settled into something comfortable after that. We had routines that didn't involve managing someone else's emotions. Weekend brunches with friends, date nights without interruptions, quiet evenings at home. We stayed alert for potential Jessica situations, but didn't let fear control our choices. Alex kept going to therapy even though the crisis had passed. He said he wanted to make sure those codependent patterns stayed broken, that he never wanted to enable that kind of toxicity again. I watched him become more confident in all his relationships, more willing to say no, more comfortable with conflict, more secure in his own worth. Sometimes I still thought about that night in the garden when Jessica yanked my hair, how close we'd come to letting her destroy us. But we'd fought through it, set boundaries and held them even when it was hard. Built a marriage on respect and communication instead of fear and accommodation. Alex told me one night while we were looking at houses online that he was grateful I'd stood firm. That if I'd been willing to just tolerate Jessica's behavior, he'd still be trapped in that toxic cycle. That forcing him to confront those patterns had saved him. We put an offer on a house 3 weeks later. A blue colonial with a big backyard and room for the family we wanted to build. The realtor asked if we wanted to wait and think about it, but we said no. We were ready. Ready to build our life without looking over our shoulders. Ready to focus on our future instead of managing someone else's past.